our friends from South Central Regional Stockyards, and Darrell Skiles is representing them today. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning, Stan. It's a beautiful day in Dent County.
Well, we got a wet day.
In the Ozarks. It's raining. Listen, I'm going to tell you.
No, rain's good. Rain's good. Storms are not always that good.
Well, we didn't need some of us didn't need the hail that we got last Monday.
You might get it again today too.
I
was out this afternoon.
I was out east of town working on some fence where I'm going to move some cattle.
My!
And we had some hail, and actually I just started to leave the truck to walk a section of fence, and thought I'm going to let this storm pass by before I get in the middle of a lightning storm down in the woods. And mercy sakes, pretty soon I pulled my truck under a big cherry tree, and I picked up stones that were as big around as my hand.
I'll bet you.
That come crashing down, and luckily the cherry tree kind of blunted some of that. But we got the rain, and I'm going to tell you, the hay and pasture situation's proved immensely in the last few days. We looked at hundreds of head of cattle for the stockyards yesterday around the country, and particularly here in the Dent County area. And the situation on pastures for cattle and things has just made a drastic change, and it was badly needed. It was getting pretty dire.
Yes, it was getting dry.
So if it wants to rain today and I don't get to work on fence, that'd be just fine. But anyway, it's good to be here. Good time to be in the cattle business.
It is. We have a special guest today too,
and have a special guest, Kevin Crider from University of Missouri Extension. Feral hog, and I'm going to probably get this wrong, but feral hog eradication elimination coordinator with Extension. And,
yeah, man. Actually, the title is outreach educator, but you're close enough with that.
Yeah, that's our goal: feral hog eradication elimination.
You bet.
And that's what your main deal is. So anyway, Kevin's going to talk to us about what's going on there. They've made
extinction would be better.
The extinction would be fine. Yeah. As far as for people that are in the cattle business.
Don't you wonder if it got so low that the government would finally say we need to protect feral hogs? I mean, oh my gosh, after all this.
I hope.
Well, there's people out there that probably would think that. We've got some of those people that would have to protect that animal.
Yeah. Well, but that's okay.
But for the damage they do, it's not worth the time.
Yeah, no, not at all. So anyway, Kevin, appreciate Kevin coming in, but it is... This program is sponsored by South Central Regional Stockyards. Had a super good sale this week, very good. The cattle market's strong as it's been, and going back to 2014. And we'll get into more of those particulars here pretty soon. But the cattle market's good. We've got a really good sale lining up for the next couple of weeks. Anybody interested in selling cattle, please give me a call.
Or buying.
Yep, or buying some cattle. You want to buy cows, calves, whatever, and we'll talk some more about these things in a little bit. But the market's very good. It was probably fully $3, $4, $5 to $8, maybe $10 a hundred higher in some places this past week. Wow. Got hundreds of really good top quality replacement cattle, type cattle, heifers, and feeder steers coming up this week from some of our area top producers here in Dent County and Phelps County, surrounding areas. So we'll talk more a little bit about that. But Kevin, again, thank you for coming in and visit with us a little bit about and for the folks who don't, feral hogs aren't near as big a problem in Dent County as they are in some of the counties around us, right? But they are a problem wherever they are.
That's correct, and I can start with that if you like, Darrell, and just tell you the top 4 counties and where we eradicated the most hogs last year, and that was Shannon County, Wayne County, Reynolds County, and Iron County. Those are the top 4 that we took hogs out of last year.
Sounds like really close to us.
Really close.
We do have some, though, in Dent County, in the southern areas and over on the eastern side.
Correct. Yeah. I trapped this area before I took this new position a year and a half ago, and there definitely are some pigs in parts of Dent County. Not prevalent, for sure, but there were some scattered around, mainly southeast side of the county.
Yeah, down towards the Bunker area and down towards Sinking Creek.
And even down toward the Shannon County line, too.
Yeah.
On the south side of Dent.
So you've been doing this about a year and a half now. I think you came on the show not very long after you accepted the position, and Darrell brought you in, and there's obviously everybody thinks there's lofty goals that we're going to be able to do this overnight. Kevin, he's hired. I'm sure within a year we're going to have this thing totally done. Hogs do tend to repopulate fairly quickly, don't they?
Yeah, on average is 2 litters per year, and those numbers average between probably 5 or 6 to up to 12 or so in a litter. So that tells you right there. And then, of course, you have to factor in your mortality and how many of those are going to survive between. Once they get up to 3 weeks of age, They're pretty quick, and they can avoid predation pretty easily. The biggest thing that's going to be a thing that gets the little ones is usually a weather issue, because mama's pretty good at protecting those little ones.
Those mamas are very good at protecting.
Yep.
And a litter born early in the year, some of the females of that litter, they'll actually be breeding and reproducing by the end of a year, within a year.
They can be fertile pretty quickly.
Yes. Yep. That's for folks. Well, first let's back up for folks who haven't met you, don't know you. You moved here from, but you have roots in this area, pretty deep roots actually. I understand.
Yep.
You
My
and
dad was
wife.
Remnants. Mom was from Summersville. I grew up in Birch Tree, so I'm from Shannon County.
Yep, you're an Ozark boy.
But then I moved away after school and spent a career out in Colorado in law enforcement with a federal and a state agency out there, and thought I'd like to come back home, and moved back here and got a job as a feral hog trapper for Department of Conservation, and then moved on over to MU Extension about a year and a half ago to do this outreach educator role.
Yep. And this is a position. Correct me if I'm wrong. MDC has funded this, providing some funding to Extension for this across the state.
It comes through the Farm Bill grant. Is where it comes from through USDA, and then that grant went to MDC, and I think they manage it actually, but it's part of the Farm Bill grant. There's 4 of these positions. I'm here in Salem. We've got Jerry Richards over in Iron County. He's the educator over there. And then Megan Crane is in Ava. And then Sarah Cope is in Poplar Bluff. So there are 4 of us.
4 of you. Very good. And the goal is?
Eradication.
Of feral hogs.
Of feral hogs, correct.
If they accomplish this, then it'll serve as a model for some of these other states to get with it.
It very well could, yeah. Yeah, we put a lot of effort into this, as most people know. We've dedicated a lot of resources to it. We've had a lot of good success, and we've got a lot of very happy landowners that we've assisted too. So,
when you came on, obviously people were seeing the spread of feral hogs, and they were fairly quickly. They were starting to get in areas that they hadn't been before, which you just know sooner or later they're going to get closer and closer and closer and move farther north. And I think the state got with it, and I know when Darrell was commissioner, I think you even talked as a commissioner about the feral hog problem, and the people up north are saying, we don't want those things up here. Now, I think that's when you finally start looking at state agencies, federal agencies, Extension, everybody's starting to join forces to say, we have a problem. We need to, as Barney would say, nip it in the bud now, because it was just going to get worse.
Yeah, to wrap it up kind of in a nutshell on the partnership side, it's called the Missouri Feral Hog Elimination Partnership, and that consists of about 18 different agencies, and that includes a couple of large private landowners too. For example, Pioneer Forest, the Ladd Foundation is part of that partnership. Department of Conservation, obviously, U.S. Forest Service, USDA APHIS Wildlife Services, National Park Service, Ozark National Scenic Riverways. There's several different entities that are involved in this partnership. And to add to that, I think if you look back at the numbers historically, back in 2020, we destroyed over 12,600 feral hogs. And then if you go, that's the highest we ever had. That's the most we've ever destroyed in 1 year.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. And in 2021, those numbers dropped down to 9857. And then 2022, they dropped down to 6289. Now, that's a good reflection on a bell curve being on the backside of it on those numbers coming down.
What about, I think we were talking earlier, you mentioned the number of landowners calling for assistance.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. In 2021, we assisted 1,308 landowners, and in 2022, we assisted 708. Now, the interesting thing about those numbers, you'd think, 700 people isn't a whole lot in the whole state. But most of these hogs are south of I-44. That's primarily where all of our focus is at. There's not really anything north of I-44. But here's the interesting part of that 708. That represents 771,000 acres of land for 708 people. So those are landowners that we actually worked on and have eliminated hogs on, and we are still working on. And if you think about it, to put it in perspective, the Mark Twain National Forest is 1.5 million acres, and we're working on 771,000 acres of private.
Yep.
And now one thing further to add to that, we scouted about 3.7 million acres. So that's the Mark Twain plus the private folks that we've scouted. Now, we didn't find hogs in all of that 3.7, but that's how much land that we've had boots on the ground looking for hog sign and looking for hogs. And
feral hogs are smart, because if they can figure out if somebody takes a shot at them, they're not coming back to that area. And if there's traps there that's for some reason somebody would activate too early. They're not going to come back to that area, are they?
Yeah, they're very aware of what's going on out there in the woods. I mean, they're survivalists. I mean, they're an omnivore. They eat anything, and they know how to survive. I mean, if you think about a feral hog and what they do to live, they're a tough animal. They can take a lot, with weather, with predation, human hunting pressure, and they learn quickly from either a trap that doesn't catch them, or
Extremely adaptable.
yeah, very adaptable, or someone that's shooting at them and doesn't hit them and runs them off. I mean, that kind of stuff can always play a part. So yeah, they're a smart animal. They're a tough animal.
But they're also a dangerous animal.
They could be, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously being an omnivore, they will eat other animals if they get an opportunity. And of course, a lot of animals that are omnivores or predators, they're a creature of opportunity. So if they get a chance to eat a turkey nest or a quail nest or a fawn that they find in the spring laying out in the hayfield, that might be breakfast or lunch or dinner for them.
Where I worked before for years, we raised hogs, and we'd have sows as they were gestating, waiting to come and have pigs. We would have them all in big groups over in the woods, and we'd feed them, pull up to the fence. We'd feed them corn all the time, but in the winter, why there'd be turkeys would come up and feed around through there and picking up, eating corn and stuff too. But at more than once, when we come back by later, we found there'd be a big bunch of feathers, and there'd be one sow that just had a bunch of feathers around in her mouth, and she grabbed one. And they'll grab them. They'll grab a full. Now that doesn't happen a lot, as you say. It's the working on this and things, but it shows they will eat anything they can catch. And they'll eat it.
And in my line of work, being an educator for MU, we talk about that conflict quite a bit on wildlife conflicts with these feral hogs. And talking to my hunter friends that are out there that like to hunt turkey and deer, specifically, the conversation that comes up quite frequently is that, what's your choice? Would you rather hunt turkey and deer? Would you rather hunt feral hogs?
Yep.
Because the turkeys are very susceptible to predation when it comes to, especially the nests and the eggs by these feral hogs. There's a new study that just came out, and we'll get the results on that here pretty quick, but I haven't reviewed it. But there's some information in there that shows quite a huge success rate for feral hogs finding turkey nests. So you can't have both, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you want wild turkeys to hunt, you don't want a bunch of feral hogs running around.
Yep. But now, for folks listening, who may not understand the impact, though, the biggest major impact that feral hogs running loose, especially for private landowner, is just the damage that they do. And if you've never seen it, you just can't hardly begin to fathom what one group of 10 or 12 or 15 or so, or you have groups of 20 or so, what they can do to a person's otherwise perfect hayfield overnight is destroy it.
Yeah, I've tell you, Darrell, that's exactly the biggest concern I've got, being a previous trapper and as well doing this education work now, is seeing the damage that especially a cattleman with a hayfield suffers. And that's really the best word to describe that. They suffer financially because they've got to put now time and effort and money into repairing that hayfield that a sounder has come through and just destroyed, and getting the equipment. And sometimes there is no equipment. They've got to make something themselves, take the time to do that, buy the equipment to build something to fix it.
Many times they're going to have to disc it down and just
start over,
reseed it or blade it down, or
yep. So now you're talking tractor fuel and everything else, and the time.
But the thing is, if the hogs haven't been gotten rid of, it's a waste of time.
Yep, they're going to come back
because once they've eaten and fed, they'll circle back, and they'll circle back. I mean, I know, and here in Dent County, I seen myself a field where it wasn't the whole field, but it was different parts of it torn up to where it really made it impossible for the gentleman to really go ahead and take hay off the field like it used to, and it was heartbreaking for him.
Yeah, and that's one message I would say that I hope people understand, that people suffer from this hog damage. The folks that are out there doing ag for an industry, and here's something that a lot of people may not know. We're the number 2 hay producer in the whole country. I mean, in the United States, Missouri is number 2. We produce just over 6 million tons of hay per year. And a lot of our hay gets exported out of state, and other people take it. And then also, we're number 3 in beef cattle production, so those two go hand in hand. We've got a large cattle operation here in the state and a large hay operation here in the state, and that's tied to a lot of folks' livelihood. So the thing that we talk about in our meetings with a lot of these landowners and the folks that are producing hay is that feral hogs and cattle operations do not go together.
No, they don't mix at all.
No.
I'm very fortunate where I'm at is on the western side of the county. We haven't had any feral hogs yet. Armadillos are the closest we come to anything like it, and they're nothing to compare really. But I know on the eastern side of the county there's some, and down on the southern areas next to Shannon County. But it's just over until just the last couple of years, they've just been increasing a little bit and kind of working their way north, working their way on in. There's some over in Phelps County, as last I understood.
That's correct. Yeah, we have some activity right now. Southern Phelps County, western Phelps County, southern Pulaski, and very northern Texas, kind of the Piney River drainage area. So there is some in that area. And we've got trappers that are working all that. So hopefully we'll get some inroads built there. But one other thing I'll say about activity and landowners is we're always looking to add new landowners to our partnership. Because here's the problem. If we have especially a large landowner that does not actively try to eliminate the hogs on their property and nobody's doing anything with them, that's just a sanctuary property that's just growing more pigs.
It's just a breeding ground.
Yep. So we really want to get access to as many properties as we can to get trapping operations going inside those properties so we can eliminate those hogs before they spill out on other neighbors' properties. And then we've got a new set of issues now with somebody else's property getting damaged, especially those hayfields we talked about that are so important.
Darrell mentioned this, basically overnight this can happen. These pigs are nocturnal. They like to do a lot of this damage at night and then hide during the day. Is that not correct?
That's fairly accurate, yeah. They're crepuscular and nocturnal, so they're very active at dawn and dusk, and especially overnight too. So as you described, nocturnal is very accurate. Daytime, especially in the summer, they're going to kind of lay down in the timber and the trees and the brush and get some shade because they don't do well out in the sun.
They don't like heat.
Yeah, they don't do well in heat at all, and they try to get away from the heat and just kind of lay low during the day, especially during the summertime.
So that makes it harder to trap them because you can't see them during the day. You can see the damage, but then when you guys do your calculations to where the traps are going to go, I mean, you got this isn't just like throwing well, we know they're going to come here. We'll just put a trap here and wait for them.
Right.
There's got to be a strategic play here involved, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of woodsmanship, and pretty much everybody that does this kind of work on the trapping side, they are folks that spent years and years in the woods and have hunted and fished, and a lot of these guys have prior trapping experience too for other animals or even feral hogs. So a lot of our time is spent looking for hog sign. And obviously, when we get a call from a landowner, they already know where the pigs have been because they say, look at my field. So that's obvious. But if we're not looking at a landowner's property where they found damage, then we're out on boots on the ground looking for damage in the woods, leaf turnover where they've been rooting and not confusing it with turkey scratch. And that's where a lot of folks confuse the two. It's like there's a difference between turkey scratch and hog rooting in the woods and the leaves.
Huge difference.
You can tell it. So anyway, the folks that we have that are doing this, they know what they're doing out there, and they're pretty proficient at it. We've got some really good trappers that are working for MDC and for USDA Wildlife Services. Now, I will say this too: we've got 48 positions out there. That's all they do is trap pigs
Here in Missouri.
Here in Missouri,
South Missouri.
Yep, we've got 32 positions just for USDA APHIS Wildlife Services, and then we've got 16 positions with Missouri Department of Conservation. So between the two, that's 48 positions that we have trapping.
So once you trap hogs in a specific, well, let's just say a specific field, you can't really trap them there again, or can you?
You can. You may have to let that site sit and
For a
go
while.
cold for a few days or maybe even a couple of weeks, depending on the activity. Because we do camera surveys on every trap site that we have. We know the numbers of hogs coming into that area. And if we say we trap 10 and with the camera said we had 12, well, guess what? Now we have to look for 2 more, and that may be a simple night shoot where you go out there with thermal equipment and sit and pick them off with a rifle if you got 2 left, or it may be resetting the trap and trying to catch them with the trap. But we don't just leave those 2 or 3 that were left, but we try to catch them all at once. We typically pattern those pigs till we've got them all coming in and under the trap, and then we catch them all at the same time.
And these are pretty sophisticated traps that elevate and drop.
Yeah.
Mostly. I mean, I know you have some that just have a trap door.
Yeah, the rooter gate traps, there's the saloon type gate traps, and the drop trap. Primarily, though, we're using now is the drop trap, and then we do have some that are electronically activated too. So like if I was sitting at home and my cell phone says, hey, we've got activity on this camera, I can look at my phone and it's called a hog eye, and we can electronically drop the trap if we have service in that area for the electronic part of it to work. Some of our areas are just too remote.
I was going to say.
They have to be a mechanical trigger.
This is the Ozarks, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of areas you can't do that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we do have both types. We've got the mechanical leverage type. We've got the shackle type trigger, and we've got obviously the hog eye camera that has an electronic trigger on it. So depending on the service availability in the area. But we try not to trigger a trap if we can until we know that all the hogs in that sounder are coming into the trap, because we don't want to educate one to become, trap shy.
And if you let one or two go, they're going to repopulate.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of time.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a matter of time. Well, when you talked about those numbers, and we see those numbers going down, which is showing progress in getting this done. And as you see the numbers dwindling and the damage going down in certain areas, do you see the hogs trying to relocate to other locations? I mean, obviously you guys have got surveillance all over the place, and you're watching this. Do you see them migrating to other places trying to avoid?
Not
yet?
necessarily. I mean, if they're pressured enough, they will travel a little bit if they're being pushed a lot. But with the trapping operations, that in and of itself doesn't necessarily push a hog to move to a new location. I mean, the average home range of a sow is right around 5 to 7 miles. She's not going to take that litter that she's got with her and run it all over the country. She'll go 5 to 7
pretty
miles.
localized all the time.
Now, we have tracked boars that we call, in the past with APHIS USDA, Judas pigs, where we take a boar that we'll catch in a group and we'll put a collar on it and let him go, because it's not a female. It's not going to have a group of pigs. And we'll track that one. He'll try to find another sounder to join up with.
He'll lead you to something.
Yeah, so we've done that, and those pigs have traveled as far as 30 to 40 miles. But the sows typically will not do that. And the trapping isn't going to push pigs that far. They may move a little bit because of trapping operations if some get caught and some don't. But historically, they're not going to move super far away from where that trap is.
And typically, though, if you're trapping, you're going to be trapping in an area you're not too keen on there being a bunch of people in there hunting them at the same time. Because
Correct.
That totally kind of validates the whole point of trying to set up a trap. Then. Yeah,
that's definitely going to be a bad thing for trapping operations if you've got people running around where the trap is and disturbing the site and leaving scent, because a hog has just as good a scent receptor in its nose as a bloodhound, if not better. I mean, you compare it to a deer or anything else out there living in the woods. I mean, a feral hog can smell like no other. And if they smell human scent and they know that people have been out there hunting them and shooting at them and some of their buddies got picked off, it's going to make them a lot more wary of coming anywhere near human scent. And we even try to do that as trappers. When I was doing that elimination specialist job, we were very careful about how much scent we left near the trap site too, just because of that very reason, because they're going to pick up on that and put two and two together that this is a dangerous place to be. So yeah, that doesn't help anything if we've got people in and around the trap site.
In the plan to eradicate the hogs, I mean, I don't know what the strategy is. I mean, it's going to take a long time because you're not going to be able to get them all, and then they're going to breed. As the ones you don't get will breed, and they just keep adding to it. But there's got to be a point where you can see that you're going to get ahead of their population explosion. Are we close to that, or is that still a few years off?
We're getting closer. We probably aren't quite there yet, but our goal is to be in a monitoring phase where we can monitor feral hogs and say, hey, they're not prevalent like they were, but there's still pockets out there that are popping up, but they're not nearly as prevalent as they were 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, where you could go anywhere in the county and find damage and find a landowner that needed assistance. Now it's more of a situation where we're just kind of waiting for the phone to ring, say, hey, I've got hogs out here, whereas for the last 6 months we haven't heard or seen of a hog in that area. So monitoring is the key word. We want to get to that point where we're just responding to calls where if a hog pops up, but we're still going to be actively scouting. That's why we have 48 positions. I mean, those guys are out there looking every day to see what's happening in the areas that they're assigned to.
So the people in your position, the 4 of you, you guys get together and discuss things and see what you see, or any changes that might be going on in patterns?
Yeah, the main thing we do is more, like I said, more on the education side of talking to folks, either in settings like this where we're doing community outreach events, radio shows, community events like where they're having a fair or a town meeting or a commissioner's office meeting, talking to the commissioners about what they may hear about what's going on in their county, going in and talking to folks that are living in the local communities, landowners, doing that outreach, stop and talks out on a county road somewhere, seeing a guy on a tractor and just stopping and visiting with him and saying, hey, anything going on here with feral hog issues you might need help with? That's primarily what we do, and then if we find out about some activity, then we, of course, put them in touch with a trapper and take care of that. I know one of our future things we're planning on after hay season is we're going to do an outreach in one of our southwest counties over south of Springfield, where all of us go over there and basically saturate the area, trying to find out who needs help. So we go out and just do knock and talk, stop at people's houses, stop at the gas station, stop at the restaurants, ask folks, hey, anything you need help with on feral hog stuff, we'd be glad to send you a trapper if you need something like that. So that's primarily what we're doing. Do a lot of research too, a lot of reading.
Yeah.
So basically, the southern half of Missouri is where feral hogs are at. You said the 4 prevalent counties, obviously,
Yeah.
Iron, Shannon, Reynolds, and Wayne. But there are feral hogs in other counties
Correct.
as well.
Yep. Those just happen to be the 4 highest counties where we took hogs last year. Now, one thing I hadn't talked about yet, and we can touch on that briefly if you want, but aerial operations is another component of what we do besides the trapping. And what that consists of is we have 8 drone pilots with USDA, and those drones are equipped with thermal cameras. So you can fly them during the day if there's no high heat like sunlight and stuff, or especially at night, you can fly them, and there's no canopy cover on the trees, no leaves. And you can see the hogs clear as day on the ground with those drones. And then the next day, we can take the helicopter when we're doing aerial ops from December to March. We can fly the helicopter directly to that GPS point and put them right on top of the hogs the next morning, maybe 2 hours after the guys finish up at 3 or 4 in the morning with the drone. Helicopter launches at daylight, goes straight out to where the hogs were last seen at, and they're on within minutes. It's very efficient, good use of taxpayer dollars, because we're not just out there burning jet fuel, flying the helicopter around, looking blindly for a sound or a
Waiting
hose.
for movement so
Yep.
you can see them, yeah.
So that's one newer thing that we've started doing, and that's been very efficient. In fact, this year, between December and March, this last aerial ops session, I think we destroyed right at 1,800 hogs with just the helicopter.
Wow. Good.
So that was very efficient use of that piece of equipment. I know we've got some folks out there that don't agree with it and don't think it works, but I tell you, I've seen it work. I've talked to the gunners. I've talked to the pilots. It works. It's a very efficient tool, and I'm glad that we have access to it, because it sure helps get into some of those difficult places. And that's one of the things we use it for, is to get into places that we can't necessarily get a UTV into or get a trap into, but we can get that helicopter in there, and it's right at treetop level, just hovering. You get on top of a group, and the gunner will tell you exactly how easy it is to pick those pigs off. Because if you think about a sow with a bunch of little ones with her, those little ones don't want to leave mama.
Right, they'll stick right there to her.
They're going to stay right there with
Right there
her,
close.
and they're using a 12 gauge typically with buckshot. So it's a very efficient tool to eliminate the hogs.
So, if somebody had a question or concern or has got a feral hog problem, who should they call? What's the
Contact me if they're in this area. I cover 6 counties.
Call the extension office 3196.
Yep, call the extension office. Leave a message for me.
Yep, 729-3196. Here at Dent County Extension Office.
And I cover Crawford County, Phelps County, Pulaski County, Dent County, and Shannon County. So those are the areas that I cover.
Real good.
Very good.
Be nice to see them eradicated, but the trick's going to be, of course, even if we get even close, is we need help from Arkansas and Oklahoma,
Correct.
and
Exactly.
Texas
Yeah.
to get it.
But I tell you guys, I mean, I've been in this game for about 3 years now, 3 or 4, and the way we're doing it works. I mean, it's really that simple. What the MDC and the USDA and the Forest Service and all the partners that we have on board, what we're doing with the trapping operations and the number of personnel we have on the ground that are dedicated to just trapping is working. So if we continue this, I think we're going to see even lower numbers next year, is my hope. I'd be surprised if they go up, but I think they'll go down again. And that just simply is reflective of what we're seeing on the backside of this bell curve. Those numbers are going down every year by 2,000 or 3,000.
I had a gentleman who has a different point of view about it all, but anyway, but he was telling me that, the reason the numbers was down because there was a good acorn crop and that the hogs were in the woods instead of in the fields. And somehow I wondered about that. What's your thoughts? I mean, if that's the case, then there'd have been a pile of hogs in the woods for the aerial thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
You didn't really find that huge increase of hogs in the woods.
The acorns are definitely a food source for sure. I'm going to
absolutely.
dispute that a bit. That's definitely a food source for the hogs. They're going to eat it just like a deer would. But they're going to eat that for so long, and then they're going to start to go bad. They're going to go rotten.
They do.
And they're going to move on to other food sources, not like the acorns anymore, whatever's left over at the end of winter. And that's when they're going to start going back to the fields again, coming back to corn, and then start coming to bait. And that's what we typically see. Once the acorn fall is done and they've either started to go bad or they've eaten what's in the woods, and that's absolutely right. We had a great acorn fall last year after that big drought. We had a ton of acorns in the woods, but pigs still want to eat something
they're going to eat every day.
Yeah, they're going to eat every day, and they will eventually come back to bait, and they'll start coming back to our traps, and that's what we saw. Once winter ended early this spring, we started seeing pigs hitting bait again, coming back to corn. Trapping numbers started coming back up again. So, yeah, there's a lull in there for sure when the acorns first fall, because they start getting distracted by the acorns, but they do start coming back to bait after that. So, yeah, otherwise we'd be out of business as trappers if we couldn't bring them back into the bait. So we wouldn't be doing this.
Yep. But to make no mistake about it, though, an old mama sow, feral sow. Well, first let's get back into the deal. When you think of feral hogs, I mean, of course, I think we kind of picture this brown, what I call an Arkansas Ridgeback hog deal, the old, what we typically deal. But these things have evolved because of hogs being introduced to them over a period of years, haven't they? They're not necessarily just the old brown, meatless Ridgeback. There's a lot of Yorkshire and Duroc and things.
We do testing on these hogs that we destroy. We do blood draws and we cut ear samples for DNA and send them out for testing with USDA out in Fort Collins, Colorado, and some other places around the country that do testing. And you're right, there's mixes of all kinds of stuff in there. You could have a potbelly pig, you could have a Russian boar, you name it. We've seen it. The Turocs, like you said, the heritage breeds, we've seen all kinds of different mixes in there. And the thing is that these were not indigenous to the country. I mean, they were brought here when we came here to settle this land. And then, of course, over the years, free range and other stuff, the hogs have been out there on the landscape. And here we are now dealing with what that's led to, essentially. So,
but there is a concern that there's been in years of people who make money on hog hunting.
Sure, yeah.
Even going ahead and releasing some hogs in areas.
Yeah, that's a problem that we definitely.
That's a whole separate deal.
We really hope that
working on.
We really hope that people aren't doing that, because we're trying to fix this problem. So hopefully people are not doing that. Mm-hmm. But as you say, if that is happening, boy, that's not going to help anybody, especially the landowners that are suffering with damage. So I really hope that's not the case. But we do have some of our DNA testing has come back. And we've got some hogs that have been found out there that are directly related, like brothers and sisters, to other hogs we've eliminated in Texas. So how do you get a sister from Texas that has a sister in Salem? It didn't walk here if that's the case. So we do see that a little bit too, where we've done some DNA testing, and some of our USDA folks down in Texas have found a hog that's a brother to one up here. So we know that proves the fact that some of that is happening.
Some of them were getting loaded on trailers and getting hauled.
Unfortunately, that is something that appears to be happening a little bit. We don't think it's a prevalent thing, but we do suspect that there's some folks that might be doing something like that, because otherwise, how would you have a pig here that's a brother to one in Texas or the father of one in Texas?
Just unnecessarily complicates the issue.
Yeah. So hopefully that's not happening, but I'd like to believe that people are doing the right thing for the right reasons.
Yep.
As Darrell mentioned, with the success of this partnership that has worked in Missouri so far, and I know Arkansas and Oklahoma and Texas, they all have feral hog issues, and they're all trying to address them in other ways as well. Is there a regional coalition of the states to look at this yet, or is that something that is possibly coming?
There are communications between all of the agency heads in each of these states, and the partnership, specifically here in Missouri, MOFEP, the Missouri Feral Hog Elimination Partnership. We are talking to all of those folks, like Arkansas Game and Fish, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and so on. So those folks are all in communications, but my knowledge of what we're doing here in Missouri right now is that we are the only program that is in an active effort to truly eliminate and eradicate all feral hogs.
So you're proactive. You
Yes.
don't want them to expand. And
No,
you don't want them to
we are not
continue to
managing this feral hog population. We are trying to eradicate them. And I want to make sure that's clear, because sometimes people confuse the two. They think it's a management program. No, it's an eradication program. So our effort is to fully eradicate feral hogs from the landscape so that they're not competing with landowners, causing property damage, competing with wildlife, spreading diseases like brucellosis to our unvaxxed cattle herds. Because a lot of folks, and we didn't talk about that, but we have a lot of unvaxxed cattle, and they could potentially get brucellosis from some feral hogs if they were to get it. And a lot of our feral hogs do have brucellosis because we test for that.
And various other diseases.
And a ton of other stuff too. Brucellosis is one of the bigger ones that we're worried about.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing we didn't talk about either is the African swine fever, which if that were to ever get into a population, it would destroy the pork industry here in the state.
So it's more than just the nuisance of a hog destroying property and doing damage to one or two landowners. We're talking about possibly killing 2 or 3 different industries in the state of Missouri.
Yes. And we hope that's what we're trying to prevent. That's why we're so proactive about this. We don't want it to get to that point where we destroy our pork industry or it gets into our cattle industry and wrecks the market there or our hay market. I mean, there's just too much at stake with people's livelihood. And that's why it's such a priority for us to try to get in front of this and make sure we stay in front of it. It's not anything about trying to take anything away from anybody that wants to do something that we're not doing, like the feral hog hunting on public lands or anything like that. It's more about making sure that we're protecting these very important industries in our state, because the ag industry in Missouri is about $94 billion a year. Now that's including timber and everything else.
Number one industry in the state.
Yeah, ag's a big thing here, and like Darrell said, it's number one industry here, and part of that is farming operations, and we've got to make sure we have to admit that.
And one thing we haven't really talked about is if somebody has this feral hog damage on their property and they want to try and sell their property, its value in real estate will tank.
Yeah. Now, since you brought that up, I got to speak to this real quick too. We've got this equipment program that the Missouri Feral Hog Elimination Partnership and was headed and spearheaded by the Department of Conservation, where we bought equipment for about 18 different counties around southern Missouri. 6 of those counties received brand new no-till drills through the Farm Bill. Taxpayer dollars coming right back to our counties here that need help. And if someone had feral hog damage for their property, they can use that equipment for free. They pay a deposit, go out and use the equipment, either disc it or reseed it or harrow it, whatever they may need to do, and all they do is pay a deposit, and they can use that equipment for free. And then the folks that don't have feral hog damage can also use that equipment for work on wildlife food plots, for doing work on their farms.
Interseeding clovers and all
seeding
that.
Clover, you bet. Yeah. So I think that's very important for people to understand, too, is that we're trying to cover all of our bases with this program, and I think the Department of Conservation specifically and USDA with that Farm Bill, for them to take that money and put it back into these counties, I think says a lot about those agencies, to those agency heads that have made those decisions to spend that money back in our counties to have that equipment available for our local farmers.
Now, the people who have property that is not damaged by feral hogs, so they would have to rent that.
It'd be a rental cost.
Those pieces of equipment.
Well, they've had no-till drills that they'd rent all the time and stuff, but this is another one they've got for the feral hog deal, but it's also available for rent if needed.
Sure is.
So that's a real plus for the counties. Yep, they get used a lot. I'm going to use one this fall, I'm pretty sure.
And those are available soil and water?
Correct. Yeah, all the soil and water districts that are partnered with us, and pretty much that's all of them in southern Missouri, have 1 or 2 pieces of equipment. Now, we didn't get every county in southern Missouri one, but next year when the new bill comes back out, if somebody got missed, then we're going to look at them, and maybe if they have hog issues in their county, we may buy more equipment again next year.
If a landowner in a adjoining county that doesn't have one of them, they can, as I understand, they can come to a county that does. They can.
Correct.
They travel well. They pull good.
So I have to ask you this question because we've had an influx of Californians and people from the East Coast that have now moved into our area buying land because it's pennies on the dollar compared to what they're paying. Have you seen people move into the area from those states that have no idea what a feral hog is, and then they may buy property and they have damage and they are clueless?
Not
as to what's
really.
Going on?
No,
Okay.
I haven't really run into that much at all, really. No, I can say that I haven't really crossed that bridge.
People should be aware, though, that what we're talking about, the downside of the hogs is the damage they do, the predation on wildlife and all these things. But we talked earlier, there was an instance down in Texas where a lady out in her front yard, a group of feral hogs came after her and got her down in the yard, and they killed her before they got the hogs off. I mean, they're dangerous.
Yeah.
And
They can definitely,
for sure.
That's what I mean.
Innocent
People coming in and have no idea.
And you go out and stumble up on an old sow's nest with a bunch of babies. She will absolutely take you on to protect that baby. She's a different creature with a bunch of babies.
Yeah,
you don't
for
mess
sure.
with a mama bear and her cubs, and you don't mess with a mama sow and her litter either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now the program I think is in a really good place. We've had a lot of success, and I guess one thing I would say too is that a lot of these folks that we work with, in fact, I'd say the majority, everybody has been really, really happy with all the interactions we've had on these landowners' properties.
And you have worked with some landowners here in Dent County, as I understand.
Yeah. When I was trapping, I covered several landowners in Dent and Crawford County specifically, and then as a educator, I cover 6 counties now working with different landowners. But we had a lot of good working relationships and a lot of success with the folks that we worked with, and I think the listeners need to understand that a lot of people support what we're doing. There's a lot of people that agree with us on how we're going about this.
If there is a group that would want you to come and talk to educate them some more about this issue or what you're doing, that's part of what you do. Educator,
it is. Yep.
That's what you do.
Yep. I do outreach and I do presentations to groups.
729-3196.
Yep.
Dent County Extension Office.
Correct.
If you're not there, they'll leave a message and you'll get back to them.
Exactly.
He got back to me, I can tell you. Yep.
There you go.
That's my job.
Yep.
I don't have anything else.
Well, thanks for
Anything
having
else,
me here. No, I
Kevin?
appreciate you letting me in to speak today.
Oh no.
Appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate the update because Kelly said we hadn't heard in a while, and it's like anything else. If everybody talks about it, it gets a lot of news attention. When nobody talks about it, everybody thinks it's already taken care of. It's not taken care of yet. There's still a problem.
And that's one thing I hadn't brought up yet. I'll say it real quickly. We have a newsletter at the MU Extension website up at Columbia at the university. It's called the Hog Herald. And what I've done is I've taken that and we send it out to all the local news outlets. So the Salem News Online gets it, Phelps County Focus, Current Wave, and Eminence, Houston Herald gets it, Summersville Beacon. So all of our local communities, I send that out electronically to them so they can also see that and they can print it if they choose to do so.
Need to be sure you're on there. Need to make sure KSMO's on that list.
I'm not on that list. I don't get that. So.
Yeah, we can add you.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah. Well, for South Central Regional Stockyards, feral hogs isn't a major issue, obviously, of course, down here, but we're kind of on the southern part of the Stockyards deal. But Dent County, Crawford County, you mentioned, you got Phelps County, some feral hogs there, Pulaski County. We get a lot of cattle from those areas and got some great producers that don't want and need feral hogs either.
Right.
So that's why.
But it could affect those markets easily.
Oh, absolutely. Anything that negatively affects our producers is a concern, and so that's one reason why here again I wanted to get with you and see if you could update us a little bit and make people aware of what's going on and where they might get some help or at least be aware and help with this problem, because it's going to take everybody pulling together to get this thing done.
And that's it exactly. I mean, that's why we want to make sure that landowners understand this program is out there, because if we have any large properties that are sanctuaries, that's going to hurt this effort. We need access anywhere there may be feral hogs at. Some people have hesitations to work with government agencies, and I just want to say that there's no reason to be hesitant to work with us. Talk to other landowners, talk to people that we've worked with, get a reference check. Just like we all do when we hire somebody for a job, do a reference check. Hey, you worked with these people. What do you think? What was your experience? And find out what the person that worked with the partnership had to say about their experience working with us.
If they have a question, there's some landowners that worked with you. Be more than happy to visit with them.
Yeah, and the other thing we do too is we do co-op meetings. We put together landowner meeting groups. Like I've had a few out in Sligo here in Dent County where I've met with the landowners in that area, and we do that when people have interest in wanting to get on board, and they say, well, let's meet as a group. Mm-hmm. So I put that together, and we can do that anywhere there's a group of folks that have interest but they're not quite sure, and then we can have folks that worked with us, myself, trappers come out. We can all talk about the issues and how this whole program is set up, and we do that as well. So we do co-op meetings.
Yep. Very, very good. Well, glad you came back home.
Yep, glad to be here.
To Dent County, you and the wife. I think you told me the other day that your wife has some family ties to parts of eastern Dent County here.
Stonehill Township.
Family.
Yeah, Stonehill Township.
Interesting.
Just out toward Bunker.
Yep. So small world.
It is. Wherever you go, you seem to find somebody from this area.
Yep.
It really is kind of crazy. I say my nephew was down in Cancun and ran into somebody from Salem. They knew who I was, so they started talking. So my nephew talked to anybody anyway, but it gets kind of crazy when you just think about how important Missouri is, because it kind of is right in the middle of the United States. Virtually everything somehow, some way goes through Missouri.
Right.
It just
It's funny when you said that. When I was living out in Denver, I was at the zoo one day, and we were walking around there, and I looked down at the sewer lid for the sewer system there, and right across that lid it was stamped St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah, foundry there.
Yep.
Yep. We were out at Rocky Mountain National Park several years ago, and up in the Bighorn Sheep Valley thing, and watching the elk. Actually, it was late September, but anyway, and ran across a couple, and from the back I thought, well, that looks familiar, and I turned around, it was some folks right here at Salem.
Oh,
we're there, So yeah, of course, Colorado gets everybody from everywhere.
Well, that's where I used to work at, was Rocky Mountain National Park.
Is
so,
that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful area. Well, Kevin, do appreciate you coming in.
Glad to be here, Darrell.
Appreciate
Thank you,
the work
sir.
you
Thank you,
read,
Stan.
Extension, appreciate Extension, and appreciate this partnership, and wish them all the best of luck. As I told you earlier, I told a fella, he asked me what I thought about the feral hog deal, and I said all the other issues, I don't care. I just want every feral hog dead. And
So how do you really feel about it?
yeah, that's the best way I can sum it up.
And that's what my landowners tell us too about the trapping operations, about how we catch 20 or 30 at a time, and they just can't believe how many hogs we catch in a trap, and they're so grateful once we call them and say, hey, I've got 20 laying here, and they're just like, thank you for doing that. So it's amazing how grateful people are to the work that the trappers are out there trying to get it done.
We get done with that, then we'll have to go to trapping black-headed buzzards.
It's been talked about. That's another topic for another day, right?
A story for another radio program.
But they
Really
are,
and truly, actually, I do plan to see. Maybe
yeah, unfortunately,
have
they
some
are
discussion about
federally
that with
protected. That's crazy.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Sometimes
they
you have
better
to
give them some helmets.
You have
is all I
to
can
wonder.
say.
Sometimes you have to wonder where common sense is. We're going to
Yeah.
federally protect
Yeah.
vultures.
Story for another day.
Okay, why? Well, there's not enough of them. Yeah, you come here, buddy. There are plenty. You can
right.
see them all over the place. But anyway, again, thank you very much. Appreciate the work you do and the outreach, and keep up the good work.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming in.
You bet.
We'll go ahead and talk about some market
All
stuff.
right, very good.
Got a few things. Thanks again, sir. Good to see you. Okay. Stan, the market, as most people know that are in the cattle business, the market's very good right now. It's been very good, and it needs to be when we look at all the costs of doing business, fertilizer, vehicles, machinery, and so on. So, but at any rate, the market is very good, and I've got some market reports here. I'll kind of highlight here. And again, what I do here is when I'm looking at this, Stan, this is, and if I could hold it up to the microphone so
You
people
go
can
right
see
ahead,
it,
hold it up
they
to-
can see that it says it's the USDA livestock market report put together by a Missouri Department of Agriculture staffer who sits there and works with the Department of Agriculture to, and they do these at the different markets around the state. An
Right.
independent person sits there and watches the market, prints it up, and they have a complete market report all going on, constantly updated.
Gives you a
But anyway,
snapshot of that day's activity.
Right, but
From that location.
and to give it an unbiased report. This isn't the sale barn themselves putting it together to skew the numbers. But we're looking at this past Wednesday, the livestock market report showed that feeders under 500 pounds were fully $5 to $10 higher, with cattle over 500 pounds probably about steady. Didn't really have quite maybe the bunches of cattle over 500 pounds quite like we did of those under. But we had, and heifers were probably fully $3 to $6 higher, and slaughter cows were about steady. But this is a time of year where we're getting a lot of these really good calves that were born last fall. And not a lot of yearlings really left in the country. And when we're talking yearlings, we're talking like, those 6 and 7 weight kind of cattle. But we got a lot of great fall-born calves coming in. Some of them weaned, some of them coming right off the cow. We had well, he mentions in here that with several very attractive light cattle weighing in that 350 to 550 pounds. And again, that'd be those fall-born calves. But the May to June time frame at South Central, we usually do showcase these fall calves, and they're coming from really some of the very top producers in our area. I'm just going to highlight some of the prices here. You know, we had some of these 469-pound calves, average 469 pounds, bringing $2.75 a pound, a little over. Now, here's some that were just about 20 pounds heavier. They're about $2.79. Now, that's almost 5 cents a pound higher. Right. And they were value added. And again, this goes back to, we've talked about this before, the value added is calves that have had some vaccinations. Sometimes maybe they've been weaned. If they've been weaned, that value added price will be even higher than of course, you know, a lot of calves coming in right now are coming right off the cows. Right off the guy buying them's got to take them home and wean them and put up with that. But to give you an idea, here was some 588-pound calves. They sold in a range of $2.14 to $2.30 with an average price of $2.20 a pound for $5.88. Here's some weighing just right at $5.70. They brought $2.56 a pound. So you're talking nearly 30 cents a pound, and these were value-added calves that had shots, full rounds. Sometimes some of the calves have had 1 round of shots. Some of the calves will have had 2 rounds of all the vaccinations. We're finding more and more, the buyers are telling us that from the vaccination thing, they'd like to see these calves come in with at least 1 round of what's called the modified live vaccine for them. And it gives them a little better protection from the various respiratory diseases.
Sure.
So we're hearing that. But anyway, that's on the medium large number 1 muscled steers, medium large, and this is going to be the medium large frame number 1. That's going to be the most desirable. So there's not real thin, but they're good meaty calves, beef calves, primarily be Angus, Charolais, Hereford Cross. Our medium large 1s and 2s, to give you an idea, still 530 pounds. And here was just 4 calves in this deal. Weighed 430, about $2.41 a pound. Still very good prices like we have seen for several years. But again, that was just 4 heads. So it doesn't take a pot load. Again, it doesn't take a pot load of calves to bring some of these really outstanding prices.
No, you don't have to have 100 to go to South Central. You can have 4. You can have 10.
We'll sell 2, 4s, 10s.
And whatever you got.
The average producer isn't going to have a pot load. To have a pot load, you're talking about 50,000 pounds. You're talking about roughly 100 calves weighing 500 pounds. If you're going to have 100 steers weighing 500 pounds, then you're looking at, if you had 200 cows, half of them are going to be steers. There'd be 100, but they're not going to all weigh within that 500 pounds.
No.
You're going to have some variance, and it just doesn't happen. Yeah. You know, some of the very large ones will. It does help. It's attractive when you can sell a pot load. But those buyers coming down and are buying the pot loads, sometimes they get close to a pot load, but they're also buying the 2s, 4s, 10s to add to those. Sometimes some of them are putting together groups because there's plenty of these groups of 8 and 10 and 12 and 15 calves that will sell together. Myself, I'll be selling about 20 or so calves. It'll be roughly 10 or 12 steers, 8 or 10 heifers. They're going to sort up, in a couple of 3 different groups. And but the buyers that are there to buy those good calves, they'll buy them good calves to match up with the bigger lots of good calves as well. Right. But anyway, that's kind of where the market was at this week, the slaughter. But to show you one other thing here, when we're talking about what goes into the value of these cattle, and again, I want to talk about a little bit on the value added, and again, that's these cattle that had shots. At South Central Regional Stockyards, we have what we call the Starback program. We supply tags free of charge to the producer. When they're vaccinating their calves, let me know, or let somebody at the stockyards know, and we'll get you the tags. If you're not going to wean them, then if you're going to vaccinate them, but they're not going to be weaned, we'll supply you with what's called the green Starback tag, and those calves then, and we'll have hundreds of calves with the green Starback tags in their ears, and that just shows then the producer or the buyer, when they're sitting up there, as soon as them calves walk in the ring, they know before anything's being said, them calves have had 1 round of shots. If they have we have a red Starback program, and those red tags then indicate that those calves have been weaned at least 45 days and had 2 rounds of shots. And so that just tells that buyer, without him having to hear anything going on,
you can immediately identify it by the tag.
And basically those are cattle that fall under that value-added category that they sure enough have a health program behind them. Weaning heifers are guaranteed open, things like that. All those things come into play, and You know, if you've got the and the genetic information that you can provide, of course, helps too. We've got a lot of our major producers in the area are buying bulls from some of the top purebred breeders in the state or around the country, and all that comes together. I wanted to mention too, though, when I was talking about these prices, you know, these are on steers and heifers. We'll have at every sale several bull calves, and excellent calves, but they're just bulls. They haven't been castrated yet or banded. And just to show you an idea, here's some. Back over here, we were looking at some calves weighing 460, about 275 a pound. Here's some bull calves, excellent bull calves, weighing 450, bringing 238. Now you're talking about 40 cents a pound difference. You know, you can pay the vet to come out and do some vet work for you if you need to. If you can't do it yourself,
that's right.
You can get them. So a pocket knife would probably make some people a good bit of money. And you know, the barn would probably, if they ask, the barn would probably provide them a pocket knife. I don't know. I'll leave that to them. But at any rate, that's kind of where we're at on the feeder market this week. And cows breaking them. Your high yielding big cows bringing 90 to $1 on the higher dressing cows. Your average yielding cows somewhere in that 80s to mid 90 price range, and then on your leaner, thinner, smaller cows, in that, well, if you got a real low dressing cow, she may be down to 50s, 60s, and otherwise most of them even would be up in the 80 to 88, almost 90 cents a pound. Big bulls bringing $1 to $1.14 or so a pound. Did have one great big old bull, long. Very big bull weighing almost 2,500 pounds, bringing 96 cents. And you say, well, why wouldn't he bring as much as some of those others? The problem is he's just almost too big for equipment at the slaughter plants to handle. They're a challenge, and they just won't bring quite as much as, you know, we had some slaughter bulls weighing right at 2,000, bringing up there well over $1, around $1.10. But once they get up extra big up there in that 2,500 and so forth, they're generally so long, even the old carcasses are just so big they're hard to handle. So at any rate, but that's what was going on in the market this week, Stan. We've got a fantastic sale lined up again for this coming week.
We have a couple
the next
sales
couple
coming
sales.
up, yeah.
We've got some outstanding reputation cattle from right here in our area. We looked at several hundred head of cattle yesterday from the region, and we've got from the Gallahofer farm here, Dent County, Salem. We're going to have an outstanding set of feeders, an outstanding set of replacement quality heifers if somebody's hasn't been keeping heifers and needing some good heifers. Also the Lennox Ranch out at Lake Springs, another set of outstanding calves, a large bunch of feeders, probably be 60, 70 or more outstanding replacement quality heifers. And the Kazmarek farm right here, Salem, an outstanding group of F1 black baldy heifers, reputation heifers, be outstanding, and more. There's many more. We'll have 2,000, 2,500, 2,800 head of feeders this week, still taking consignments. We'll look for the market to be good. You know, a couple of weeks ago, the futures market fell off $6 or $7 a hundred. This week, turned around and put a good bit of it back on, but the cash market was good across the country, and there's great demand for these feeder calves. The fat cattle, finished cattle market is strong, and people like to eat beef. That's just the way it is.
They do like to eat beef.
Yep. You know, they can talk about the fake meat and all that garbage all they want to, but you just can't beat the real deal. And so the domestic...
You don't hear about those plant burgers much anymore.
I'm not even sure they ought to be legal.
But I mean, I know there's
Yep.
and there's some people that can't. We know
Sure,
some people get tick bites; they can't even eat beef.
Sure, we get that.
You know, and it happened. But there are plenty of people who can.
Yep.
You know.
Oh yeah, and by and large across the country, the demand for beef is strong and good. You know, the quality of beef that's being sold anymore, the quality of cattle across the country has improved so much over the years. If you look at it, the quality of cattle that we'll have, our producers, again, and we will help steer producers to the right purebred breeders that'll get them, you know, the kind of bulls that will top the market.
That's right.
And the quality of beef that's going through the chain all the way up the line is improved so much from what it was, and numbers of cattle that will grade choice and prime go into the restaurant trade, but also then that you see at your supermarkets and these things. It's good stuff, and it's improved. The domestic demand is there. So the market's good. The numbers are lower on these feeder cattle and on the number of cows across the country because of drought issues and some things like that. And so we're really sitting in the driver's seat. And I'll tell you, this rain this last week or so has just really helped a lot with everybody's feeling of what was looking pretty dire there for a while. And so so everything looks better. Looking for a good sale this week.
And there's just a
at the South
report on
Central
this morning. I don't know
Stockyards.
if you heard it talking about the farm, the market out west is going to be rough this year, and they're already talking about it because of lack of rain.
It's still very dry in
and so
parts
it's
of
going to be
Kansas,
a rough
Oklahoma.
market for those farmers, and especially those ranchers out there that have got a high number of livestock. It's going to be hard for them this year.
About 3 weeks ago, we had to take a trip for a memorial service out to Arkansas City, Kansas, for father-in-law, and I was surprised to find there in that southern Flint Hills, blue stem pasture region of Kansas out through there, how dry they were, and how many of the ponds, watering ponds that they would use, were some of them dry, and otherwise the ones that weren't were very low. And so it
Got a little rain here lately, but not enough.
So we're still considered dry in Missouri,
yeah.
but this rain's picked up and made our hay crop and pastures look so much better than what they had just in the last few days. But it can change. But if a person's got some cattle thinking about selling or whatever, we've got this sale coming up at South Central Regional Stockyards, and then another week we'll have another really good sale here before Memorial Day, and then in June we'll continue on. Somewhere along the line, it's going to get really hot and really humid.
Oh yeah,
and
well, it's already humid here too.
yeah, and then it'll kind of slow down a little bit.
Tomorrow's supposed to be what, 87, humidity is 60%. That's pretty sticky.
Yep, pretty sticky.
For May.
Yeah. So anyway, got a couple of good sales coming up at South Central Regional Stockyards, and got a real good replacement cow market, of course, all the time. These good bred cows. If you got some good bred cows, or you got a herd you're thinking about selling out or something, give us a shout. We'd love to come down on the farm, or if you want us to come down to the farm and do an on-farm appraisal of your feeders and visit with you about some ideas what you might do to as far as marketing, when and how and so on. Why, give a call. South Central Regional Stockyards office number is 422-3305. My cell number right here, and I'm right here in Dent County, is 573-308-5415. Get a hold of me, and we'll get with you and take a look at your stock and your program and see what you got, see what you might want to do.
So if somebody wanted to get into becoming a cattle producer, Darrell, and we have a lot of people that are starting to move into the areas. That's what I mentioned to Kevin, because they're coming here from California, they're coming here from New York.
They're buying farms.
They're buying farms. They really want to do this, but they don't have a clue what they're doing. They have no idea, and so they'll go out and buy a whole bunch of whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't even know what they're buying.
Want to be careful.
And then all of a sudden, they're half of the stock that they bought is ill. It's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to get any money for it. We don't want anybody to lose out when they're trying to get into to cattle production, because it's expensive.
It
You're
is.
going to get into it. But if you want to get into it and get into it right, they really need to call people like yourself, South Central Regional. Call them and say, hey, I want to do this. Can we sit down, or can you send somebody out here to explain to me what I need to do?
That's very good, Stan. I'm glad you brought that up, because really, if they're going to do it, then they're going to be wanting to sell something somewhere down the road.
Sure.
And that's the idea. And so, give me a call, 573-308-5415, or call the barn, talk to Dave Patton, or one of his sons, Ross Patton or Bill Patton. That's the owners of the barn. They'd be more than happy to visit with you, or come down and sit down and visit with you about the cattle business, help you get some good cattle bought, or come on up then to the sale on a sale day and try to get up a little bit early and visit with somebody. They'd be happy to take you back in the barn and show you some of the cattle and give you some ideas what some different types of cattle are going to bring, and what you need to get in and sit through a sale and kind of watch and see what some of those what some of the top producers in the area are producing, and then visit some more about the kind of bulls, the kind of cows that they had to get to be in it. Because to be honest, it really doesn't cost that much more to raise good stock as it does to raise junk.
No.
And
but we need to get across people's minds. It's not like the stock market. You don't buy it today and it's ready in 2 days.
No, it's a different.
This is a long-term investment.
Right.
It really is.
Now, if somebody has bought some some ground recently, and they're thinking they want to get into cow biz something. They do. There is a sale coming up this next Saturday, May the 20th. Eric Muse from Extension was on with me a couple of weeks ago. We talked about this some, but the times are different than what we talked about last week, so I did want to highlight this. But there is what's called the Central Missouri Show Me Select Bred Heifer Sale, and that is put on by Extension. The barn is hosting it. Now, you can't bring heifers up that day and decide to sell them. This is a program where you have to enroll these heifers if you're a producer, and there's 95 heifers that will be in this sale next Saturday. Starts at 4 o'clock up at South Central Regional Stockyards. These heifers will be, most of them, they'll be crossbred and purebred both. There'll be Angus, be some Simmental, Charolais, and Limousin. They're all bred to calve this coming fall. If you bought some ground and you want to get some cows or heifers to start calving, these are heifers that they've been on a complete health program, been enrolled several months. These heifers, after that weaning, they were vaccinated for the various respiratory diseases according to label directions, treated for internal and external parasites. They have to either be naturally polled, which means they don't have horns, or they have to have been dehorned completely and back at weaning. And then before breeding, they do a reproductive examination. That's where a veterinarian or somebody goes in actually with they call it a pelvimeter, and they actually measure the pelvises on these heifers to get what the square inches of the pelvis is, and they have to meet minimum standards. And basically what this does is to help guarantee a heifer can easily have a calf. If a heifer has too small a pelvis, it doesn't matter how nice she looks, you're probably in going to have problems calving, but they'll have reproductive tract will be scored. They even actually the veterinarian will actually palpate the ovaries and give a score for that whole reproductive tract. And the heifers are weighed. Again, they're vaccinated, boosted for the various respiratory diseases. And then many of these heifers will be artificially bred to some of the top-notch bulls in the industry. Many of them AI bred. And these bulls that they use for AI and natural service still have to meet minimum cabinese figures for EPDs. That's expected progeny differences, technical term. But at any rate, whichever breed they're using, they have to meet minimum standards for cabinese to be eligible to be bred. But again, as I said, many of these are bred to some bulls that Stan, you and I could never afford to buy sons out of, let alone use the bull himself.
Sure.
And we've got. And just looking through here, there's 14 head from one farm of very nice home-raised black heifers, artificially bred to a bull named Milbar Hickok. Excellent, outstanding bull. Great cabinese figures. Another set from a gentleman up in Montgomery City, and I know him well, Montgomery City, Mike Deering, and a set of 17 home-raised black and black baldy, black white face heifers. And, there's 17 there, 14 up here. And, if you've got a small operation, you just want to buy a small number, here's some folks that they're going to have 3 black white face Angus Hereford heifers cross that have been AI bred. Now, they've also been then pasture exposed.
Sure.
Some heifers have these. These were all AI bred here. Here's another 3 black homegrown Limousin cross. A lot of people like Limousin, and they're in the sale. So anyway, here's 4 AI out of AI sires of black Angus heifers from a gentleman up at Freeburg, and they've been AI bred. So they've been preg checked, safe, and again, that sale. And again, don't be thinking you're going to come up to the sale and unload some heifers and sell. This is, you had to have enrolled in this early, but these are top-notch, top-quality, 95 bred heifers that will calve this fall, preg-checked, guaranteed bred, and bred.
Well, that's why they're called Show Me Select.
Show Me Select bred heifer
Yeah.
sale. South Central, this is about the 4th year in a row. South Central Regional Stockyards sponsored this. Very happy to sponsor it for Extension, but Extension, basically all the rest of this is up to Extension that does this. So again, anyway.
I remember when Ted Cunningham first told me about the Show Me Select program.
Uh-huh.
This was years ago, and he really thinks this is going to be a top-notch program that's just going to continue to grow.
And they've been doing this is the Central Missouri Show Me Select. They have one down in Southwest Missouri. Right. There's one over in Southeast Missouri.
I think his was at West Plains was the first one that he had gone to. Uh-huh. And he told, when he was in here doing a show for Extension, he was explaining that he goes, this is something, he goes, that's even better than he ever thought it would be.
Yep.
So.
It's been around for quite a while, but it's just really the last 4 or 5 years they got this program started here
Right.
for Central Missouri, and got some super good producers. The Bailew family, the Deering family, the Falters,
Wow.
the Grellner farms over at Owensville.
I think more people are doing it
Yes.
because this is the future.
Yeah.
It really is.
Uh-huh.
It's the future of a lot of farmers, future of a lot of
Yeah.
ranchers, future of a lot of producers.
There are some people who this through these Show Me Select heifer sales is where they get the heifer all their replacements. But especially if you're really starting out and you want to get some heifers, top quality, top notch, bred to the top bulls in the breed, this will be a good sale to come to. But
you go.
later this summer we'll also be having we've got some folks already talking to us about some groups of bred heifers that they kept and went ahead and bred to some top bulls, and that they'll be selling later this summer, and we'll advertise those as we come along. But
Very good.
at any rate, if you got feeder cattle or cows or something interested in selling, or if you want some help buying some cattle, we can help you get some cattle bought. And again, if you got some feeder cattle about ready to go, you might think about getting a hold of us. Call the barn at South Central Regional Stockyards at 422-3305, or give me a call at 573-308-5415. We'll arrange an on-farm visit, and we'll take care of you in any way that we can. So anyway, Stan, that kind of catches up, and do appreciate
Kevin.
Kevin coming in, visit about the hog situation.
Yeah, I really thank him for
Feral
coming
hogs.
in and getting us updated on that. I want to thank Darrell for coming in. Of course, this program is paid for by South Central Regional Stockyards, and it gets you up to date on what's going on in your region, then kind of get an idea of what's available out there, and also make you aware you're more than welcome to come to their sales and contact
Absolutely.
them for any information you have
We've
about
got a
becoming a
great-
producer or even selling.
We've got a great restaurant right there at the sale barn called The Market, owned and operated by Tracy Pattenshiver, and it's a great restaurant whether you're coming up for the sale or anytime. They have a fantastic breakfast. If you're ever headed to Jeff City early one morning, you can stop in there on your way. Great breakfast, great dinners, lunches, and clean as a pin, and you'll enjoy it. Come on up, watch the sale, have lunch or supper, and stop
Make
in
a
and
day
see-
of it.
Stop in and see us.
Make a day of
Our
it.
sales are every Wednesday. We take cattle. We've got great pens, feed and water pens, outside lots, pastures, and things. Run in, we can take care of things. So give us a shout. Come by and see us.
All right, well,
We'll
very
be
good.
back in a couple of weeks
Yes,
here on
we
the
will.
radio.
By gosh, we will, Darrell. We will on the 26th of May, right before Memorial Day.
Yeah, I reckon so.
There
The
you go.
26th, Friday before Memorial Day.
Yes, sir.
Yep. I
I
was
want
getting
to thank you for coming in and bringing Kevin with you. Appreciate that.
You bet. You bet. Yep. Very good, Stan. See you in a couple of weeks.